never dreaming that I would see scrolling across the bottom of my TV screen early this week that Mr. Basketball, Mr. Wildcat, Mr. Bill Keightley, the father and father-in-law of that home, had graduated from the honorable position as the glue, the constant, the stable factor, the encourager, the motivator, the energetic gatherer of perspiration-filled towels and jerseys, thrown aside as dirty, used, and no longer needed by the team that he lived to make winners. Only to take these useless items that looked bad to others and smelled bad to others and present them back to the team he believed in, giving them the ability to start the next day with the vision that they could be new again today, regardless of yesterday's mistakes, fresh again today, regardless of the stench of yesterday, and the physical picture that the team he equipped, the greatest basketball team in America, was new every morning, equipped to win, and the dream, the vision, and the passion, though knocked down from time to time by difficult practices, and difficult games, and difficult seasons, and difficult critics, was a team that never stayed down. Like the legacy of Mr. Wildcat, Mr. Bill Keightley would get up to win again. When I received the call early this week to speak on behalf of the family of Mr. Keightley, I was honored and humbled at the thought of walking across the stage with such greatness as sits and stands in this arena tonight. The greatest leaders, the greatest coaches, the greatest fans, and the greatest friends in America are in this room today. And I began to think about the man that we honor today and his greatness. Over 45 years as a servant leader, his jersey hanging in the rafters, his name, a name of honor, his presence, a presence of integrity, of stability, of strength, of energy, and passion. Something makes a man become a legend in his own time. I received my answer on Tuesday when I spoke with Karen. And I asked her, Karen, what would you like for me to do? What would you like for me to say? And she said, you know, Bill, you always know what to say and what to do. Just do the right thing. You see, that's what Daddy always did. He always did the right thing and said the right thing, even when nobody was watching. And then I realized the greatness of a man is saying and doing the right thing every time, all the time, even when no one is watching. And that was this man. Mr. Keightley had a passion for winning, and he knew that without the right tools, the right equipment, the team would never achieve the goals it dreamed of every season. You see, Mr. Keightley was a dream maker. He took the simplest of jobs, just taking care of shoes, socks, basketball shorts, jerseys, and turned it into a lifelong passion. His mission in life was to give the team the equipment it needed to be a winner. And he quickly learned the lesson that when you make others better, when you make others a winner, then you become part of the winning. Ramel Bradley said it so well when he said, he makes me feel like I'm his favorite. But you see, the thing about it is, he makes everybody feel like that. Mr. Keightley was a friend to the friendly. He was a friend to the friendless. He could look in the eyes of a coach, of a player, of a young man, and even a child, down on himself and as low as he could be, and he could see a winner. And he knew how, with a slap on the back, and a get in there and get it done attitude. He knew how to draw that dream out of that person, even though the person himself could not see the dream. He had a great amount of pride. He was proud of his family. He was proud of the University of Kentucky basketball. Win or lose, he loved his Reds, and he opened with them every year, regardless of last year. He had laced up enough shoes to know exactly how they were supposed to fit perfectly, to guard the ankles of the players he loved and protect them. You see, Mr. Bill was truly a champion and understood that becoming a champion begins with being well equipped and preparing to win. He honored his leaders, and Coach Tubby Smith summed it up so well when he said, you see, that's the way it's been. It's not us sitting by him. It's just him sitting by us. No one ever had more passion for Kentucky basketball than Mr. Wildcat, Mr. Bill Keightley. You see, he was a friend. He was coming when others were leaving. He was standing when others fell. He stayed after others left. He was going when no one else would go. From the verbal accents of the great Northeast coaches to the smoothness of the South, to the vitality and energy of the West, his friendship transcended languages. His friendship crossed barriers of age and time and race and gender. He was a friend because he understood what it means to be loyal. Loyal during the times that you sat on the bench with him, and still loyal in the times that you sat on the bench of a competitor. His loyalty as a friend set him behind his friend Rick Pitino to watch him win just a few days after his own team dreams had seemingly come to an end. His friendship and his loyalty were tireless and without measure. The heart of this great man lives in his family in Hazel, in Alden, and Karen. And they have been everything to me that he has been to this great commonwealth that we live in and this great university. Who was Mr. Bill Keightley, Mr. Wildcat, Mr. Greatness? He was a passionate, loyal friend. He was a mentor. He was an equipper. He was a man of integrity who took things no one else valued and he made them the tools of a champion. And he always said the right thing. And he always did the right thing. Every time, all the time, even when no one was watching. I challenge you that this day, today, tonight, that this is the place and this is the time. And you are the person from the greatest to the least that Mr. Keightley, Mr. Wildcat, would love more than life itself to teach, that the best things in life come when you do the right thing, when you say the right thing, all the time, every time, even when no one is watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Smith. And now the second coach that Bill Keightley worked for is Joby Hall, and he's going to share some of his special memories with you at this time.
I'm not happy to be here. Bill Keightley, Mr. Wildcat, What could I say that hasn't been said 1,000 times since we learned of this tragic going? Bill Keightley was special. There's no question about that. On our radio show, Denny and I have heard of so many testimonies that have called in. And all of them tell a story about Bill Keightley, about what kind of person he was. One of the stories that came in was about a little boy about 10 years of age that stopped Bill Keightley at one of the games and asked him if he would sign his cap. And Keightley looked down at the little lad and he said, "That's a beautiful cap you've got with a beautiful K on it." He said, "Are you sure you want me to put my name on that cap and mess it up?" And the little boy said, "Mr. Keightley, Mr. Wildcat." He said, "Your name wouldn't hurt that hat." He says, "That case stands for Keightley as well as Kentucky." And Bill signed the cap. But he did so many things by touching so many people. And I thought I was his best friend. But over here, and here, and here, and up there are thousands of people that thought the same thing. Because Bill Keightley made you feel important. He got Dwayne Casey after I'd chewed him out at a practice. And Dwayne went to Bill and said, "Gosh, I'm not getting enough playing time." He said, "What should I do?" And Bill says, "You can't hut a bear with a switch." He said, "You better listen to your coach." But at the same time, he'd put his arm around him. He'd console a player that the coach had really gotten on. Dwayne said it was like the good cop, bad cop, and I was the bad cop. He was more than a equipment manager. Bill Keightley was so competent and did his job so well with such ease and perfection that he grew beyond being an equipment manager. He was as much a part of the Kentucky basketball program as anyone that's ever been here. We got there at dark on the bus, and Devender stepped off the bus and saw a big building. He said, "This looks like New York City." Well, you can guess that Devender got the nickname Pikeville. It wasn't the only player that Bill nicknamed. Kenny Walker was called Walkman. Larry Stamper was called Beattyville. And I don't doubt that he had names for everybody that came through the program. Managers, players, other coaches, everybody that he met. He could come up with an endearing name that told a story about his relationship to that person. Recruiting, Bill Keightley was probably the best recruiter that we had at Kentucky. He presented a friendliness, an enthusiasm that showed those recruits what to expect when they came to Kentucky. He threw out enough love that those players knew they would be well taken care of. And I think every player would attest to how he did. Bill Keightley outgrew his job as equipment manager, and he left a void in this program that's going to be impossible to fill. Coaches come and go. Players come and go. But Bill Keightley left a hole in this program that is impossible to fill. We miss him. We love him to death. We give our love to his family and pray for their peace. And all of you will remember him forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach Hall. Professor McCorvey will now perform Just As I Am.
Just as I am, without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee, O Lamb of God, I come. I come. Just as I am, and waiting not to rid my soul of one dark blot, to thee whose blood can cleanse each spot, O Lamb of God, I come. I come. Just as I am, though tossed about with many a conflict, many a doubt, fighting and fears within, without, O Lamb of God, I come. I come. Just as I am, thou wilt receive, wilt welcome, pardon, cleanse, relief, because thy promise I believe, O Lamb of God, I come. I come.
Thank you, Dr. McCorvey. We will now hear from the athletic director of the University of Kentucky, Mr. Mitch Barnhart.
I come from a little bit different perspective. When you look at the speakers to my right, they very unique family of basketball. Coaches, people that have been in the locker rooms. From an administrator's perspective, it's completely different. We have not as much interaction as the family of basketball. It doesn't mean that there's not the love there that we felt for Mr. Keightley. I will say this as I look at these guys sitting on the front row, and those two rows, managers, staff over here to the right. Guys, he loved you more than words can express. He didn't do it for himself. He did it for you. He did it for you. And that's made it all the more special. Today we have the honor and the privilege of remembering a true treasure of Kentucky, Mr. Wildcat Keightley. First, let me acknowledge his family, specifically Hazel, his wife, Karen, his daughter, and let them know that they will be in our thoughts and prayers in the days ahead. I would like to give some perspective from the University of Kentucky and a couple of personal notes over the next few minutes. 48 years on the sidelines of Wildcat basketball. If you look at the statistics, 1,464 games, 1,113 games Kentucky won. That's a lot of victories. 6 head coaches over 4.5 decades. Several hundred players and managers passing through the locker rooms of Memorial Coliseum, Rupp Arena, and Joe Kraft Center. Let's just assume, for simplicity's sake, that during the season, of course, making sure that we monitored all those practices, that the team averaged 130 practices a year and another 70 or so workouts during the off seasons, early fall and spring, somewhere in that zone. Mr. Keightley prepared and worked through roughly 11,000 practices in addition to those 1,464 games. And that's a lot of basketball, and it's a lot of hours given to something which was so much a part of his life. Amazing numbers. Yet, as has been so aptly described early on, Bill Keightley was so much more than practices, so much more than games, and so much more than locker rooms. He was truly the heartbeat of a university. Beyond that, he was a tremendous, tremendous ambassador for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. A few things it was not. It was not about money for Bill Keightley. I'm confident there were many opportunities his notoriety would have brought him outside of basketball. It was not about honors. He had plenty of them. The job was not about him. He knew it was bigger than any one person, and he let you know that every day. However, he knew it was about people he loved. The people he loved, players, coaches, managers, staff within the Wildcat family, and also the extended Kentucky family, fans, friends of the program, but most importantly, the Commonwealth of Kentucky. He knew that's what it was truly about. It was about a state's heritage, basketball. He loved the game. It was about a university he loved, the blue and white of Kentucky. It was about a city he loved, the rolling hills and horse country of Lexington. It was about a Commonwealth he loved, the bluegrass of Kentucky. A lot of people will describe him today in a lot of different ways. My description is simply this, and you've heard it said already: he was loyal. A trait which is tough to find nowadays, true to his word, and the effort necessary to finish the job he started every day. You'd get here at 7, he was here at 5. You get here at 6, he got there at 4. You stayed till 10, he stayed till 11. Whatever it took to get the job done, Bill Keightley finished the job. Humble, again, it was not about him. After most of the games, he was generally one of the first ones back to the locker room. I always marveled at that as guys walked down the hallway. He was one of the first ones back, foregoing the spotlight and choosing to get on with the task at hand, and that's preparing for the next deal, preparing for the next thing. He worked to get on to the next job. You've heard him say he was encouraging, always there to squeeze the back of the neck or shake the hand of someone in need of a good word or a smile. Always. As Coach Gillespie said, he always made you feel like you were his best friend. Coach Hall said the same thing. Joe said he thought he was his best friend. Again, everybody here did. Bill had that way of making you feel special. His advice and his wisdom, wonderful. Always delivered in a timely fashion. Always very discreetly done and very considerate. He was a wise man. He had a servant's heart. In Matthew 23:12 it says, "Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." We're called to be ourselves and humble ourselves and serve others in all that we do. He served others with a great humble heart, unbelievable humble heart we could all learn from. On the team plane, I was always struck how Mr. Keightley sat in the very last row on the aisle seat. I'm not sure the reason for that. I truly believe it was because he wanted everyone else to be well taken care of and making sure that they had the seats that they wanted, and it wasn't important to him where he sat. He put others in front of himself every day in every detail. He was Kentucky's great ambassador. He was the first person people asked for on the speaking circuit, always. He had great wit and was wildly popular. We all knew that. His stories were fabulous. His stories were fabulous. He always acknowledged by on-air personalities everywhere we'd go, whether it was radio, television, they were the first people to go over and greet him every game. It was an amazing phenomenon you can't explain to anyone else anywhere in the country. The game officials, when they took the court, whose hand did they shake first? It wasn't the head coaches usually. They didn't want to spend much time with them anyway. They went to Mr. Wildcat, and they shook his hand, and rightfully so. He was the glue. He was the lead goodwill ambassador for the University of Kentucky. We will miss Mr. Bill Keightley, and we'll thank him for all of his contributions to the Commonwealth of Kentucky and to the University of Kentucky. We thank you, the family, for letting us have him for 48 very special years. We owe you a lot, and we thank you for that. We thank you for allowing us to enjoy a true Kentucky treasure that cannot be replaced, but will always be remembered. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Barnhart. We will now hear from one of those managers that thought he was the best and favorite manager, Vinnie Tatum.
When I was asked to speak on behalf of the managers, I knew immediately what I wanted to do. I just wasn't sure if I would be able to get through it. But in the spirit of Bill Keightley, here it goes. Words will never describe what Bill Keightley meant to me and my family and all those involved in Kentucky basketball for 48 years. While he never scored a point, grabbed a rebound, he assisted so many others in so many ways. He helped Kentucky to 3 national championships, 8 Final Fours, 12 SEC tournament championships, and 24 regular season titles. He was a part of 1,113 wins and dressed 19 college All-Americans. Bill probably was more successful off the court than he was courtside. Bill has helped turn out doctors, lawyers, engineers, and more. Several of Bill's boys have turned into be great high school coaches, even better fathers and family men. No one will ever love Kentucky basketball, the Cincinnati Reds, the Postal Service, or the Marine Corps quite like William Bond Keightley. No one will ever love the players, the coaches, the managers, the staff, the students than Bill did either. Bill was always joking that I was one of his best managers he ever had. See, I never went to class. But what he never told you was, it wasn't the fact that I didn't like school. I just loved being with Bill more. When I came to Lexington as a student manager, I was 17 years old and green as could be. 3 years later, I left with a degree in Keightley, the nickname Pork Chop, and more knowledge about life than one could ever imagine. He taught us all the lessons of life and respect. We were his boys, and he was our man. He taught us how to live life to the fullest. He taught me how to pour a good, strong drink and how to size up a pretty woman. He was a tireless worker. He knew how to have fun with the best of them, though. He was a father figure to us all. We have all laughed with him. Now we'll all cry for him. He was the first one in each day. He was the last one to leave. Whether you needed a pair of socks, a pair of shoes, or just a Coke, Bill was your guy. He may have complained along the way, but we all knew he was sincere and loved every minute of it. At 81, he related to 18-year-olds like no other. He was my hero. He was my idol. He was my best friend. From the American to Pat's Steakhouse, everyone knew Bill and how much they loved him. From Pikeville to Paducah, from Harlan to Henderson, he represented Kentucky basketball to all. He didn't care if you're from Brooklyn or Batavia, Clay County or Chicago. He treated us all the same. He was always on time, and he was always right. He was a fair man and a very loyal man. Who would have ever guessed that the last live college basketball game Bill saw was Louisville versus Tennessee. It was the last 3 hours I spent with him, and it was the best. From the day Coach Pitino moved him from the end of the bench to the first seat on the bench, he has been the face of Kentucky basketball. He was the past, the present, and the future. I've talked to him every week. A lot of times we talked about everything but basketball. I'll miss sneaking up to Lexington, going to the Coliseum, grabbing a cup, heading down the call to get a cup of ice, and sneaking a drink. I cherished every day that I was with him, from the Kentucky Derby to tailgating at football games. One of my best memories with Bill was last spring. We were both out of the NCAA tournament and able to attend spring training in Sarasota, Florida. Along with my brother Spencer, we saw 4 games in 5 days. From early morning breakfast with Marty Brenneman till nightfall, we talked about baseball and his beloved Cincinnati Reds. It was fitting that Bill's last trip was out to a baseball game. He loved baseball, and especially the Reds. Opening day will never be the same. I bet if you ask him, the only regret he had about Monday is that he missed the game. He may be gone, but he's definitely not forgotten. Bill's spirit will live forever. Like the sticker said on the old file cabinet next to his desk in the cage, bald is beautiful, and so was Bill. His spirit will continue to live with all Wildcat fans, players, managers, and coaches forever. He was loved by many and will be missed by all. Miss Hazel and Karen, my thoughts and prayers are with you, and as you know, Bill's boys are only a phone call away. Bill Keightley, a real man, a real American, a Wildcat forever. God bless Bill Keightley.
It's been a joy ride all the way. When I leave this earth, I think I'll have it inscribed up on the monument, to be continued.
I can only imagine what it will be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you? Jesus, or in all of you be still. Will I stand in your presence? To my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine.
Young people who I've spent my 44 years with, God bless you. I love you all.
Only imagine when that day comes, when I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever, forever worship you. I can only imagine. Only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, wanna will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in all of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? To my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, surrounded by your glory, wonder will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in all of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? To my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever, forever worship you.
Whatever I've done, I'll get up in the morning and I shall continue.
I can only imagine.
Now the coach that moved Bill Keightley from the foot of the bench to the head of the bench, Coach Rick Pitino.
Well, I would have to speak after that film, of course. You know, when I look around, so many great thoughts go through your mind for all of us. And when I remember Mr. Bill, I said to him, "Where do you sit at the games?" Fully knowing where he sat. I wasn't sure if it was a last seat or a seat behind it. He said, "Well, I sit toward the end of the bench." I said, "Well, you're going to sit next to me." I said, "Because I've got a bad temper, and I don't want to get technical fouls. I don't think these people in the South trust Northerners." He said, "Coach, I don't belong up there. That's for coaches." I said, "Well, from this point on, you are a coach. You make sure every time I get up and cross that box that you stop me. Don't ever let me get a technical foul." So he sat there thinking he had a new job on the horizon. Second game of the season, he put his arms up and, "Don't take a step further, coach." I said, "You don't sit down, you're going to be one dead man." It was the last time he tried to stop me from getting a technical. But I think about all the accomplishments, certainly of Coach Rupp and Coach Hall and Tubby and now Billy, and I look around with so many great memories, and I really think that the greatest accomplishment that I had here, looking back on it as I was thinking about it and listening, was moving him in his rightful place from the end of the bench to the head of the bench. And you know, it's obviously we all cry and we all laugh somewhat. And for Karen and Hazel, they go home with the longest memories of all of us. The but about it, though, I learned a long time ago, experiencing certain tragedies in life. And it was different for me because I had my side of the family, which was Italian. My wife's side of the family, she was half Irish. And I go to these wakes, and it was very difficult, the Italian side. Everybody was crying hysterically, almost jumping into the gravesite. And the Irish side, all they were doing is telling stories, jokes, drinking beer, and having a great time. And after experiencing both sides of the family on numerous occasions, I really wanted to be Irish for the first time in my life. And today, I really want to be Irish. Because although I cry and I hurt inside, for a great friend. Last week, I sat outside some place called Boardwalk Billy's in Charlotte, North Carolina. Nervous as heck for the basketball game. Vinny Tatum told me that Bill was coming to the game. I couldn't fathom it, couldn't believe it. And as I sat outside, I saw Bill walking across the bridge toward Boardwalk Billy. It was the strangest thing because he was the last person I'd ever thought I'd see at a Louisville NCAA game. Now, I know firsthand, and it doesn't matter where I work, he hated Louisville. Because when I called him, and the most difficult thing I had to do in coming back is call the players and get their approval. Then the last phone call I had to make was to Mr. Bill. And I remember it was dead silence on the phone, and he said, "Are you damn lost your mind, son?" I said, "No, Mr. Bill, I really missed the state, and things haven't gone well with me in Boston." He said, "Son, have you damn lost your mind?" Well, I did. And when Mr. Bill was walking across that bridge, I thought about that phone call. He gave me a big hug, and we sat down, and he said, "You're going to beat Tennessee. And then you'll get even with Carolina for that Kansas game that first year." I said, "You really think we can?" He said, "You're going to win it all." And he pointed to the ring, and Ron Carmichael, a friend of ours, was sitting next to us. He pointed to his '96 championship ring and said, "I need another one of these." Talked a little bit more, and he left, and I walked back to my room fully knowing that Mr. Bill wanted a Louisville championship ring. Not really. It was just telling him that he cared for me and he loved me and wanted me to win that championship as a coach, because that's what he was all about. Well, although he is the ambassador of Kentucky and he loved the University of Kentucky more than life itself, he knew about loyalty, he knew about friendships. Karen was the apple of his eye, and Hazel was the woman he was in love with. And Kentucky was the most important thing in his life. And I think for the rest of my life, in thinking about Bill, it's always been tough coming in here because of the great memories I've had. I don't think it'll ever be as tough as it is today. Because not only was he someone we all looked up to, a great friend, a great person, but when Kaywood Lefford left, we lost a soul at the University of Kentucky, and now we lost a heart. And for me, it was the last link I've had with this great place. And for all of us, we need to be Irish tonight. All of us need to think of Mr. Bill and celebrate his life. Because after all, when you describe a great athlete in life, a great basketball player, it's someone that not only statistically shows his greatness, it's someone that makes everybody better with their presence on the court. The power forward becomes a better rebounder. The point guard becomes a better passer, all because of that great athlete on the court whose presence makes everyone better. And just think about that great athlete. Greatness. Making others better in life, making others better on the court. Who better that we've all known in life that made us all better than Mr. Bill? I don't think I would have ever had the fun, I would have ever had the joy if it wasn't for that man sitting to my right. He's a true godsend. We will miss him terribly. Tonight I'll wipe away the tears, and from this moment on, I'm not a big drinker, and I can never drink bourbon, just not in me. But Mr. Bill, I'm going to start drinking bourbon for the rest of my life in your honor. I'm just going to take a small taste of it. I don't know what you liked about it, because I tried it one time, but I'm going to try a small bit of it. But I'll truly celebrate Mr. Bill. We're all the luckiest people on earth because we got to hang around a treasure for a short period of time. Karen and Hazel, you're the luckiest of us all. You got to spend the most time with him. We all got cheated. You got the gift of a lifetime. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rick. And this is another one of his best and favorite managers, Jeff Morrow, who is now the coach at Jeffersontown High School, and just 3 years ago won the state basketball high school championship.
It's an honor to stand here this evening, be on this stage to help remember a man that we all loved. To be asked to share on behalf of managers is a tremendous honor when so many managers have served during Bill's tenure. Hazel, Karen, Alden, thank you for sharing him with us. Without your support, your encouragement, and allowing him to do the things he loved to do, he would not have touched my life or the lives of many countless others. When I think about Mr. Bill, so many memories, so many good times that come flooding back. Some of them we shared, just he and I. Most of them we shared with other managers, players, coaches. In the last 9 years, I've had to bury both of my parents. Tonight I feel like I'm burying a second father, because that's what Bill was to me. A third parent, a second father. I often tell people when they ask about my coaching that my philosophy of basketball, X's and O's, how to run a team, came from Coach Pitino, because I had the opportunity to learn under him for 5 years. But without Bill Keightley giving me the opportunity of a lifetime as an 18-year-old high school graduate, I would not have been able to learn those lessons from Coach Pitino. So both of them share in the success that I've been able to enjoy. There's 3 words I want to focus on tonight when thinking about Bill: labor, loyalty, and love. I remember the first time that I met Bill like it was yesterday. It was June of 1987, about 21 years ago. It was between my junior and senior year of high school. I arrived at the old equipment room before it had been remodeled. Many of you have seen that room. And I sat down with him to discuss the possibility of becoming a manager when I graduated from high school. I was all dressed up, had my resume, student body president, senior class president. I found out very quickly Mr. Bill didn't care about any of that. That was not impressive to him. What he wanted to know was my heart, my work ethic, and why I wanted to be a part of the Kentucky basketball program. Bill was a blue-collar guy. Bill was hands-on. I told the Lexington Herald Leader earlier this week about how meticulous he was when packing for road trips. He would not let us do the packing for fear that we would screw up. He did the packing himself, and then we carried the bags out. But to Bill, it was not a job. It was a labor of love. Bill did it because he loved doing it. He smiled, he laughed, and we all learned something from him on a daily basis, whether it was managers, players, and even coaches. The word loyalty has already been used several times tonight. Everyone in this room that knew Bill Keightley knew he was a loyal person. You knew where he stood. You knew where his loyalties lied. And if you didn't know, he'd be happy to share them with you. He demonstrated his loyalty, I think, in several areas. First, with the wonderful head coaches that he worked with. Some of them he thought of as brothers in his early years, and the later coaches he thought of as sons. After my team was fortunate enough in 2006 to win the state championship, I invited Bill to be the guest speaker at our banquet. Those who know Bill won't find this as a surprise, but Bill was the star of the show. Not the awards and the rings and the things that we passed out. He captivated the audience for 45 minutes telling stories. One of the stories he told, he talked about each of the head coaches that he had worked with. He shared a funny story about each one of them, a good memory about each one of them. And at that time, of course, Coach Smith was still here. And when he got to the end of that part of his talk, he said that he's often asked this question: which head coach was the best to work for? He said at first he didn't know how to answer that question, but he said he heard a story about a gentleman who had been married 3 or 4 times. So he learned how to answer the question this way. He said, I guess the one I'm with right now is the best one. Most of my tenure was spent, as I mentioned, with Coach Pitino, and Coach Smith was here as an assistant, so he talked a lot to me about his affection and his deep concern for them. It's already been well documented about his trip to Charlotte last week to see Louisville play. The last time I saw Bill in person was 2 weeks ago on Saturday, right down here in this end zone, on Saturday morning of the state high school basketball tournament. On one side was Coach Gillespie, and I sat and talked with him for about 30 minutes. And Coach, he shared with me how close you two had become in just one short year and how much he was looking forward to the future with you. He was loyal to his friends. There are too many friends to name, and it's really unfair to start. But I had the opportunity to see his interaction with 3 of his closest friends on a daily basis. And then after I left and would come back, still had that opportunity to see them. Van Florence, Bob Wiggins, and Luther Deaton were 3 of his closest friends in life. He stood with them in good times, bad times, poor health. He was loyal, and he demonstrated his loyalty to them and to countless other friends that I am not mentioning tonight. He showed his loyalty to his boys, his managers, as he called us. He always knew what we were up to when we left. He knew what was going on. In my case, he followed my team like my own parents. He would wait on Wednesday mornings after a Tuesday game, Saturday mornings after a Friday game to see the paper and see what we had done. He was one of the first phone calls I received after winning the championship in 2006. And we shared a moment on the telephone that I'll cherish for a lifetime. This year, he was, again, the first to call and congratulate us on making it to the Sweet 16. And he was the first to call the day after we lost. Even though he was in California and the team was getting ready to play Marquette, he called to console me and congratulate me on a great year. The third word is love. And we've already documented tonight what Bill Keightley loved. It's obvious: his family, his friends, the Kentucky Wildcats, the Cincinnati Reds. Like a parent, sometimes Mr. Keightley had to show us some tough love. I recall a trip to a blue-white game in Owensboro, my second year here, Coach Pitino's first year. The players were flying on private planes. The managers, the trainers, the team doctor, we were traveling in two vans. Bill was driving the equipment van. I was driving the other van with the passengers in it. The last thing he said to me when we left the Coliseum was, "We're not in any hurry. Take your time, and we'll get there when we get there." And he gave me a bag of change for the tolls. So, as you can imagine, I'd heard that lecture from my parents many times when I left home as well. I followed him to Bluegrass Parkway, but as soon as we got on Bluegrass Parkway, I merged over into the fast lane, took off. Our van was laughing, chuckling as we passed. I will never forget the look he gave me as he was driving that car and looked over at me. As I said, our van thought it was real funny. We traveled on down the road a little bit more, and one of Kentucky's finest, state trooper, decided to stop us. It wasn't long while we were over in the emergency lane, and I was speaking with the fine trooper. It wasn't long before that second van passed us. I'll never forget that look either, as he leaned up to the steering wheel and gave me a look over. I spent the rest of the way to Owensboro thinking, what is he going to say to me when we get there? Sure enough, he was standing outside his van waiting as I pulled into the Executive Inn parking lot. And he came over to the window and he said, in a very stern voice, "I thought I told you we were not in a hurry." And I felt about that tall. But that's just one example of tough love. But most of the love that Bill gave was love, kindness to all people that he encountered. One more personal note, if I may. As I mentioned, my father passed away in the year 2003. Bill Keightley was a pallbearer at that funeral. My dad worked in General Electric assembly line for 36 years. He was very shy, very introverted. Other than the family, he did not socialize that much. When I became a manager at UK, Bill Keightley merged a friendship with my father and brought him out of a shell that is really amazing. Even after I left here, my dad would bring vegetables that he grew in the garden during the summer on a weekly basis. Him and Bill shared a friendship that was not about Kentucky basketball. It was just about two good old country boys talking about the garden and other things. And for him being a friend of my father, I will never forget that. One thing that Bill always used to say, Kentucky basketball is bigger than any one person. It's bigger than any coach, no matter how many games they win. It's bigger than any player, no matter how many points they score. Every time Mr. Bill said that, I agreed with him. Tonight, I respectfully am going to have to disagree with Bill after thinking about it. He was and is Kentucky basketball. He has proven over a 48-year career that as great as this program is, it is not bigger than the heart, the soul, the labor, the loyalty, and the love of Bill Keightley. The only man in the illustrious history of this program to be called Mr. Wildcat. Thank you.
The next speaker on our list called and sent his deep regrets for not being able to be here. That was Coach Tubby Smith. He was on the plane. They were pulling out from the gate when they heard the announcement that the plane had to return to the gate because of problems, and they had to deplane, and he wasn't able to get another flight to be here. But he does send his deep regrets and his sympathy to Hazel and Karen. Our next speaker is someone who knew Coach Patino and Coach Tubby Smith very well, and that is Jeff Shepard.
I also counted a joy and a privilege to be here in honor of Mr. Keightley and to speak on behalf of the players. Mr. Keightley, we probably as players told you thank you a few times, but definitely didn't tell you thank you enough times. And tonight I just want to tell you thank you for several things. First thing I want to tell you thank you was for stale moon pies, for the treadmill experience, and for teaching me how to pin up my practice bag. In the summer of 1993, I arrived on campus at the University of Kentucky, and like all players, just immediately connected with Mr. Keightley. Not because of anything that we did as players, but because of everything he did as himself. Right away, I found out about Mr. Keightley's stash of candy and snacks and pop and Gatorade and water. Rodney Dent was a senior on the team my freshman year, and his nickname, as you remember, was Moon, because he liked moon pies. So Mr. Keightley immediately went out and got some moon pies for Moon. By the time my senior year rolled around, 4 years later, I decided that I would try some of those moon pies that Mr. Keightley had. And it became my senior year became a daily ritual for me to grab a moon pie and a drink before practice. As I would eat those moon pies, I noticed that my first bite of those the moon pie was just a little bit crumbly and would kind of crumble on my practice uniform. But I didn't know that was my first experience with moon pies, so I would eat those moon pies every day before practice. Later I found out that a moon pie is actually soft when you bite it the first time. And I think those were the same moon pies that he bought for Moon in 1993. So Mr. Keightley, thank you for the stale moon pies. But more importantly, thank you for being so prepared for all of us that weren't prepared. During our practices in the 90s with Coach Patino, one of Coach's favorite forms of discipline was sending us to the treadmill. And I was one of his favorites. Coach would send us to the treadmill when we would make some bad decisions, a turnover, or forget to block out, or forget to rotate on defense. And if you remember Memorial Coliseum's practice floor, there was a huge glass window, and the treadmill sat right inside of the glass window. Coach Brown, our strength coach, would be in there as Coach Patino would send players in there one after another. And I don't remember which player was on the treadmill that day, but Coach Brown happened to have both treadmills going that day, because sometimes Coach would go ahead and send two people to the treadmill. And as one of those players was running on the treadmill, Mr. Keightley decided that he would go and encourage that boy just like he encouraged all of us. But as you also remember, Mr. Keightley's hearing was kind of getting a little bit bad, and he didn't hear that second treadmill going on. So he stepped on that second treadmill, and it spit him right out the back. But thank you, Mr. Keightley, for encouraging all of us when we were down. When I first arrived at the University of Kentucky, I learned about our practice bags. And our practice bags were blue mesh bags, and they had these great big safety pins on there with our number on them. And Mr. Keightley taught me how to put my bag together and to stick my pin through my bag and close my pin so that my practice gear would not fall out in the wash. Now, you may think, well, why do you need to teach an 18-year-old boy how to do that? But the managers could attest of how many of us players just don't know how to do something simple like that. But Mr. Keightley taught us how to do the simple things. And he taught us that it's the simple things that eventually lead to championships. Mr. Keightley was titled the equipment manager. I think it's very appropriate. Mr. Keightley, you equipped us with socks and ball shoes and t-shirts and shorts and jock straps and tights and sweats and warm-ups and winter jackets, running shoes, practice uniforms, and game uniforms. But more importantly, you equipped us to work hard, treat people the right way, to be prepared, to love what we do, to carry ourselves with class, to win championships in life, and to play with passion and to live with passion. You know, the coaches at the University of Kentucky taught us some great lessons as well. But they had things like video equipment and weight rooms and scouting reports and preseason conditioning and phenomenal assistant coaches and technology. Mr. Keightley didn't need those things to teach us. He taught us with his life. Before we came out here today, some of the media were asking us some questions, and they asked us, how do we honor Mr. Keightley? And it's a tough question. But I think we honor Mr. Keightley with our life, because Mr. Keightley taught us so many lessons with his life. He didn't need words to teach us lessons. He just had to speak your name. He just had to touch your arm. We saw his life of service. And to honor him, I think our challenge is to simply live a life as Mr. Keightley lived. Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Pelfrey, a former UK player who is now head coach at the University of Arkansas.
Just had a memory. This is not part of my deal. Last time I was on this floor, they retired our jerseys in terms of being out here at mid-court like this. And so many memories for us come back into this place. And words cannot express my sadness and sorrow for Mr. Bill's family, his dearest friends. I know that my heartache pales in comparison to your feelings and emotions. Please accept my deepest sympathies. I'm very humbled and honored to be able to say a few words about this great man. I can only speak from my knothole, from my vantage point, and that primarily is as a player. Mr. Bill's passing is certainly a monumental loss for the university, for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, for the spirit of kindness. Humanity is taking a shocking and stunning blow. For some, it's hard to understand because it's hard to explain. Some may not get it. That's okay. At the University of Kentucky, people don't understand the fanaticism around the program. You try to explain it, they still don't get it. But when they have the opportunity to experience it, the phenomenon starts to make a little sense. That's what it's like to try to explain Mr. Bill. Does not make any sense that a guy would have the same job for 48 years, develop relationships with different coaches, all of whom have different personalities, yet all call him friend. Have the respect and admiration for sometimes spoiled, pampered athletes, the total love and devotion of student managers. How'd he do it? What made us all love him so? Maybe it was because every time you saw him, it was a hearty hello, followed by a hug, a big laugh, a very distinguishable laugh. A laugh that said, I'm having a good time in your presence. A laugh that said, I'm loving life. I had my last moment with Mr. Bill this year at the SEC tournament in the lobby. He was there. I happened to be passing through. The same greeting, a hearty hello, a hug, and a distinguishable laugh. The same as it was when the first time I met him on my official visit back in 1986. Maybe we loved him so because of his fierce loyalty and love of the Wildcats, unmatched devotion to the name across the chest of that special piece of cloth. He loved everything about it. The man loved basketball and everything that came with it. None more than winning. I truly believe he was a part of our winning process. We knew that the outcome of the game was important, but it was just as important to Mr. Bill, thing called life. Not only did you want to perform well for your coaches, your family, but you wanted to perform well for him because of the great joy and satisfaction he got out of a win. I'll never forget the first time I heard the phrase. I'd never heard it before. When Mr. Bill, somebody asked him about his favorite team. He said, my two favorite teams are the Wildcats and whoever beats Louisville. There are so many reasons why we loved him, too many to count. None more important than the fact that he treated us all with dignity and respect. Day in and day out, he was there to do his job well. I can never, ever remember him not being there, him taking a day off. Truly an everyday guy. He was also, as we've heard here by many, an encourager of young men. As a college basketball player, we need that. Mommy and daddy's not always around. Sometimes you got a coach that's really coming down hard on you. He had an uncanny ability to always know what to say. We need it as athletes. We're all insecure little boys. We need others to believe in us. I don't remember the game, win or lose. I don't remember how I played. I do remember, for whatever reason, I was there at about 12:30, 12:45, close to 1 o'clock, coming back home from a road trip, and all the bags were still in front of Mr. Keightley's office, and I started helping him get them inside the door, and as the last bag was chucked in there, he raised up, he looked at me, and told me he was proud of me, and I was turning into a good player. And for me, that really meant something. Regardless of how many points I did or didn't score, whether it was because we won or lost, but because he had seen so many great ones before me, and because he loved the jersey as much as I did. It's a great compliment. We will miss him every single day. Time will pass, but we will never forget Mr. Bill. I hope I can. I hope we all can be the type of person that he was. A person who always greeted me with a hearty hello, with a hug, and a big laugh.
And now we will hear from the current coach at the University of Kentucky, Coach Billy Gillespie.
Got to move this down a little bit. I'm not quite as tall as Johnny. When they showed me the order of the speakers, and they said that I was going to be one of the latter ones, I was hoping that someone would come up here and cry like a baby so that I wouldn't look so bad. It's been they're tougher than I am. It's been a very, very tough week for all of us. So many great things have been said by so many great people. Every person in this place has a great memory of Mr. Keightley, not one, but a million. And we're all honored to be here today, I know that. And like Coach was saying, we have to find some way to make this a celebration because he meant so much to all of us. There's so many people that have more right to speak than me, but it's a great honor for me to be up here to share a few words. Words really can't describe the feeling that you feel about Bill Keightley. And he made us all feel great. We've heard that time and time again. He made all of us feel like we were his best friend. And I mean, there's so many great times, just so many great times. I haven't had the opportunity to be around him, not even a year yet, and I feel like he's one of the dearest friends I've ever had in my life. Because of, on a daily basis, I said this earlier in the week, we have a fantastic practice facility, and we would walk out there and we'd start practice, and usually at the start of practice, Mr. Keightley would be in his area over there, and there's two doors out there where he would enter practice, and we'd just be about to begin, or maybe we were having a huddle, and he would come out the door, and it was like when they used to say, "Here's Johnny," and every single day, and he came out with a smile on his face and his arms out like this, wanting to hug every single player and every single coach. And it wasn't a performance for him, but it was a performance for us. His heart was in it every single day. One of the things that I look forward to, we in my estimation, have become so close, it's crazy, and that's all, man alive, what a great treat for me and a treasure. But one of the things I look forward to, one of the many things I look forward to is on a daily basis, when we went down to the practice floor, Mr. Keightley would be sitting in his same spot. And that would be 10 or 15 minutes before practice, or maybe sometimes about when we were about to start. And he and I might have been out last night having dinner until 9 or 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or whatever. And I'd go over there and I'd shake his hand, and he'd say, "Hello, warrior," and shake my hand like he hadn't seen me in 6 months and like I was a family member. And it was something I look forward to every day. He had no idea what it meant to me on a daily basis to be able to see his smile. Like we're talking about smiles, you're talking about he's real. He was real, he still is real. It's very difficult because of how sudden everything has happened. It's very, very difficult for all of us. You know, people say it's a sad day, it's a sad week, it's a sad month. This is a sad eternity. The only way we'll ever make it through it is by very, very, very strong, undying faith. And we'll have to practice that faith to make sure we're okay. I can't imagine how good it must have been to be his child, because I've seen how he treated all his other children for a year, and man alive, he treated those guys with unbelievable respect on a daily basis and undying love. I can't imagine how it must have been to share so many times with him, Hazel. And I know you told me many times this week about how he was a ball player and you were the cheerleader, and it started then and it's gone on forever and ever, and it will always be ever and ever. I can't imagine having the opportunity to be around him for every day for so many years, and I know how difficult it must be. He loved the Wildcats more than I'm qualified to tell you, because he loved the Wildcats for a long time, but it didn't take you long to figure out how much he did love them, and will continue to love them. There was a few things, though, that I wanted to share a little bit that were a little bit more light. I brought something out here today. I brought a sock. This is a sock. This is one of these things that we're talking about how great he was. I'm going to give him a little hard time. For the last 3 weeks of the season, I'm the head coach at the University of Kentucky. And I'm so proud. I've been so proud to do that forever. The last 3 weeks of the season, I went to practice with one sock on and one sock off. And I said, Mr. Keightley, the first day I did it, I showed him that I was out of socks. And so I pulled up my sweats, and I had one sock on, and I had one sock off. And he laughed at me and whatever. We went on to practice, whatever. Well, I'm expecting the next day, I'm going to have some socks. Next day, I go to my locker, I'll try to get a couple socks. I don't have any socks. I said, hey, Mr. Keightley, did you forget? I showed him one sock on, one sock off again. This is a true story, unfortunately. And he said, no, I didn't forget. And I said, well, is it possible for me to get some socks? He said, I gave you 3 pair in October. I'm thinking I think we got a really good Nike contract here. I could get at least 4 pair of socks. No. That's a real true story. He celebrated life on a daily basis, and before he ever said that, he said, "Hey Bubba, I gave you 3 pair in October." When he wanted to tell me something, when he wanted to make a point that he was getting serious, he either said, "Whoa, wait a minute," or "Hey Bubba." And when he said those things, I knew he was serious. So when he said, "Hey Bubba, I gave you 3 pair," I knew I wasn't getting any more socks unless I went and bought them. I also heard about how good a player he was over there at Kavanaugh, and I've heard that he wasn't as good a player, Hazel, as you were a cheerleader, but I heard that he was a pretty good player. But I also heard that he was much better at shooting and scoring than he was at passing. And I heard that he did like one of his teammates. I saw him today, and he said, if you played with Bill Keightley, you better be a really good rebounder because you weren't going to get to shoot much. That's ironic because I guess he got all the shooting done and all those kind of things before he became the equipment manager here for so long, because there's never been a greater assist man in the history of anything. He's been a great assist man to all of us. Most of the time, when you have a difficult day like today or whatever, you kind of put on a time frame or whatever. I think every single person here tonight would go on and on for 24 hours, 48 hours or whatever, just to hear great stories about a great man. I know I would. I've learned a lot this week about he and his family and his loving daughter, loving wife, and son-in-law, and how many great stories they shared with me, and I could listen to them all day long and look forward to listening to many of those great stories as we go forward. I don't really want to quit talking, but I need to. I've done quite a bit better than I thought I would as far as bawling, but I've been crying all week long. Ever since we got the word that Bill had passed, and I know I'm not the only one that hadn't been able to sleep any, and I know I'm not the only one that's been crying all week long. But like Coach Patino was saying, we have to find a way to celebrate his life, and that's what I told our players. Guys, we have the greatest opportunity, every single person here and across this great state and across the basketball world, because not only was he Kentucky Wildcat, he has a very, very, very high place in the landscape of college basketball all over the world. So many people knew him and know what he meant to this university. But what we've had and what we will continue to have is great inspiration on how we should all live our lives. And you hear so many great things, and it's going to continue forever because it should. But you don't hear those great things about every single person. And the reason you hear those things about Bill Keightley is because the way he went about celebrating his life on a daily basis and the way that he treated people every single time. And as a friend, I can't, it's very difficult to move on. You know he's in a greater place. You know that he's going to have great influence on all of us forever. They say that they can't take it with you. Well, from what I've heard from the equipment room, he's been storing up equipment for about 45 years of those 48. He wouldn't give players any shoes or any socks or whatever, unless they had treads showing through them and they could see their feet bleeding on the other side. So that I know that all of us, when we get the opportunity to be with him again, he's going to have a Wildcat jersey with our name on it. Thank you.
I was supposed to say something after all of these speakers had finished, and I did have some things prepared, but what I had prepared pales in comparison to what these people have shared with you tonight. So I want to just leave you with an image that came to me as I heard these speakers share their sentiments about Bill Keightley. One of my favorite Broadway plays is Les Miserables, and Jean Valjean is the main character, and he sings the final song in that play, and the last line in that song are these words: "To love another person is to see the face of God." To love another person is to see the face of God. It was God who created Bill Keightley in his image and likeness and made him special and unique in all the world. But God created each and every one of us in his image and likeness. It's just that some people reflect that image and likeness so much better than others. And I hope that we will all leave here tonight determined to be more like Bill Keightley, so that those that we have relationships with in this life will see God's image and likeness in us a little more clearly. I have a sympathy card that I'm going to give Karen and Hazel, and I will just simply close with reading this to all of you. On the front of the card is a beautiful old tree, and it says, "In the tree of life, our roots are forever entwined." And on the inside, "With their last breath, those we have greatly loved do not say goodbye, for love is timeless. Instead, they leave us with a solemn promise. When they are finally at rest in God, they will continue to be present to us whenever they are called upon. Let us not grieve beyond letting go, for in the tree of life, their roots and ours are forever entwined. And now we have our final tribute to Bill Keightley. Dr. McCorvey is going to perform My Old Kentucky Home. And after that is finished, the family will be escorted, and the rest of us are asked to remain here until the family has left the floor.
The sun shines bright on my old Kentucky home. 'Tis summer, the people are gay. The corn tops ripe and the meadows all in bloom, while the birds make music all the day. The young folks roll on the little cabin floor, all merry, all happy and bright. By and by, hard times comes a knocking at the door, then my old Kentucky home, good night. Weep no more, my lady, oh, weep no more today. We will sing one song for my old Kentucky home, for my old Kentucky home, far away.
If you knew Bill Keightley, you would never forget him. He was kind to everyone, a friend to everyone. He was also a tireless worker, a wise man. No one could love the Cats more than he did. And what he meant to so many people over so many years is hard to put into words. I'll tell you this, no one can fill his shoes. He was one of a kind, irreplaceable. Those of us who had a chance to know him are so glad we did. Good night, everybody.
This has been a 27 News First special presentation of the Bill Keightley Memorial Service.